Thank you, Danielle. Last, we have a very special guest, Joshua Edwards, who is the author of several books, some of which are available back there on the table, including The Exhausted Dream and photographs taken at 1 hour intervals during a walk from Galveston Island to the West Texas town of Marfa. He directs Canarium Books, teaches at the University of Chicago, and sometimes sells books at Marfa Book Company. Please welcome Joshua Edwards.
Thank you, Micah, and thanks to Danielle and to Sarah and to Joe, everybody at Malvern, and to you all for coming out. I'm going to read from this little blue book, which is the book that's free if you buy any other book in the store. It's a verse novella that's sort of episodic. It goes month by month. And I'm going to read a section from each of the thirds that it's broken into. So I'll begin with the first section in the book, which is January 21st, 2012. The subtitle of the book, this is called The Exhausted Dream. The subtitle sort of explains the narration, which is a monthly account of the year leading up to the end of the world by Agonistes, prophet and fulfiller. If you have ever returned from a trip abroad and found your country completely changed, then you know how I have always felt. I once thought it a simple problem of geography, that I was born 10 hours late, that the globe had spun beneath my soul too much, and when I did at last descend, I animated an American instead of a nascent whale or someone destined for wealth and greatness overseas. Later, once I had learned that God is dead, but there is a striving and adaptive spirit in all forms of life, I shifted the blame to history, the ugliest story I've ever heard, and one whose gore I can never seem to turn away from. I was born too late or too early, or I shouldn't have ever been born at all. Then I ended up on a sofa and learned about Freud and dreams I didn't have. Although most of it seemed phony, the source of my constant discomfort became clear. The world is made by anxious people, made in fits and starts when they are without love. That was and is where I rest my case. Love itself is good for nothing but killing time, and the desire to make the future into a circumstance to be survived. What remains if thou lovest nothing well? If you said emptiness, then you are wrong. Emptiness itself means well when well wrought, but love not well made is its opposite, which, mind you, is not hate, it is revenge. And so, when I looked to the stars and saw only the darkness between them, I knew that our world's time in the heavens should end. I am building a machine that will bring a comet into Congress with the earth, to return the ether to its peaceful anonymity without a subject. I should be much for open war, as if my eldest brother were a cosmonaut. But alas, I have no older brother. In fact, I am a space cadet myself. I am the world's only real astronaut. I am always moving farther away. I was born an orphan and do become more of an orphan as I grow older. All my years I've spent in this place, alone, but for those who made me eat my carrots. From their kitchen, I've heard morality cry out as its contradictions collapse upon mankind. We who used it against one another in our arguments and wars, the belief that death is some cave or hole, has led us to use life as a weapon. Only by destroying death's ladder's rungs can we bring eternity back to life. None of us are innocent, and that word itself is evil wherever applied. No, evil is not a strong enough word, for evil has an end. But innocence is an endless loop of hurting people. When you hear someone laughing, is your first impulse not to think they're laughing at you? Defeating the indefensible is youth. Everyone knows how cruel children are. Still, it is not cruelty that I loathe. I do not loathe. I only love, as well as any other imperfect lover. But love itself is breaking. As a boy's voice breaks under maturity's burdens, a girl captures his imagination with her smile. His bicycle seems too small, and his baseball cards turn into paper. Once upended, the world is never free. Still, my love is strong for all waves and groups of people, and for them I raise a glass and toast a way to end our suffering, a way to end it all without murder. If your refrigerator crushed you, would you call it a killer with your last breath? No, You would cry and think of sandwiches. Such is my plan to bring relief to us. Heaven will fall upon the earth, and we will be subsumed into the universe. I have read hundreds of religious texts, 7,000 books of philosophy, and 1,000,000 pamphlets of poetry. None of them contains an ounce of wisdom. They are merely tired lists of arguments, digressions on beginnings and endings, rules for vanity and birthday parties. The question that we really want answered is what will happen to our precious souls? Such a question can only be answered with a sincere apology, and now only the skies of violence is sincere. I see this end in our future, and now be the prophet and the fulfiller one. So it starts out a little bit dark. And then as the seasons change, so does his thinking about the world. So this is the second third, sort of in which he meets somebody and wishes that he hadn't set into motion the events that are going to destroy the world. And it begins with a quote from Bakunin, which is, "All people are filled with a kind of premonition," or this section does. And yeah, so this is kind of right before he falls in love. So it's still pretty dark here, but I'll work out of that with the last one. So this is May 21st, 2012, and it's ending up. It ends at the end of the Maya Hob calendar, which, if you all remember, the world might have ended on December 21st of 2012. To fuck a god out of the sky, one must dream of roses blooming in the springtime, then break a vase upon which is painted a scene of waning romanitas and a woman waiting for her past to fade. Because we think ourselves too far along, there are things that can no longer be made. Victorian carriages, Fabergé eggs, beauty, verbal prophylactic charms. The future has no thought of balustrades. Before their voices devolved into streams of echolalia and suffering, a few rich snobs turned poor saints said that if a man is who he would have others be, that he may have some power over them. Thus speaks religion to philosophy, philosophy to government, and gods to preachers, preachers to fathers, fathers to sons, and sons to mothers, full of love, who bear witness and mourn their shameless boys. My own tears mimic archaeology, as does my desire to possess the past, as if things were only their adornments, that vase without the warm blood that filled it, vast cathedrals empty in the same way, and even philosophy's strange questions poured out of the earnest skulls that hold them. Living only for what's gone as I do, my life is a mnemonic pilgrimage to a dismantled desert monument. Moving toward that image, I lose faith in what an image might return to me. So I turn away from what I witness, like a sailor going blind from the sea. The best guides descend into some darkness before they find a means to treat the light and follow past the roll of the setting and rising sun, away to more obscure and breathtaking views than the smug grandeur that the proclaimed names of things would allow. With a heart the color of bitter wine, yet still undeformed by grief of knowledge, I spent many years trapped in the idea that bridges could be built by promises, not knowing that words themselves are too false. People know less with every word they speak. Isn't a bridge best appreciated as it recedes against the great beyond, for a falling hero who has renounced the hope of a river's splash awaiting? Traumas of the grave are the cradles too, our lives bookended by these empty thrones. History rejects all enlightenment, but the votaries still lay claim to truth, as if it were more than idolatry, and misery would melt with their candles. The blue sky is supported by mountains. Heaven is held up by columns of dust. Do I see enough of what surrounds me? I am modern, but is my tragedy? My pocket watch grows warm within my fist. The chain that tethers it to my waistcoat hangs between us, like the thin leash between Androcles and his lion, as they strolled through Roman markets and were showered with flowers and money by trembling gawkers. Sometimes the tick of my watch and the pulse of my heart strike at once, and it's as if two opposing factions have grown so far apart they find themselves on the same side. How much better to be anonymous and to hold time, and by holding it hide, like a famous actor watching a film they starred in before they were a star hides, from all aspects of time but hopefulness. And hope is the philosophy of birth. What is birth if not the birth of a mouth? What is life if not vocabulary? And what is death if not a final word that stretches out into eternity? For in a word or in the act of speech, there may play out stellar eternities of birth, life, and death, in search of new mouths to be born from, to burn with, to die for. A faint image takes shape in my head now, of a row of hotels along a lake. I see them as if behind frosted glass, witnesses without anything to say, standing in the haze of their unknowing on the last day of a millennium. I was working in one of those hotels as a dishwasher in a restaurant. I found the view there suited for watching a new world unfold without the modern failings of which I so often complain. Of course, no sensational freedom came. So there and then I began my study of civilization, astrophysics, and the power of positive thinking. It took me years, but I found an answer. So the final third, in which he's well in love, and generally a more positive person, begins with a quote by Simone Weil, which is, "The sea is no less beautiful to our eyes because we know that ships sometimes sink." And then some other stuff happens, but you'll have to pick up the book to find out if it has a happy ending. So this is September 21st, 2012. As the best actors move on from TV and leave shows in shambles, viewers bereft, and characters to death or surgery, so do I move beyond my yesterdays into a new life, an acropolis so perfect it seems built to be ruined. Like a swimming pool at noon in summer, the future waits coolly to be entered, but disturbances of satisfaction can overwhelm the impulse of the act. There are plants that die from too much water. Some things are meant to merely be observed, and others are born to be suppliant. I reach out for love without knowing if to love means bliss or merely drunkenness. There are plans that vanish in their planning, and dreamers that drown in their ambition. I doubt my senses. I hear smells. I see symbols wherever images should be. A sunbow's arc above a waterfall. As yet, the beachcomber in me believes that beneath the proof of dirt is payment for the labor of creation, or love, maybe not the gold to bloom, but a shell with the ocean where a creature should be. For the first time, you hear your lover's voice singing a language you don't understand, and the words you once knew lose their meanings. I am so confused by this new feeling. My greatest fear is I will outlive it. Everything seems to be going well, but who knows well when less is nowhere near? There is such a thing as a perfect storm, when all the elements of misfortune converge to produce a great disaster. One of the elements must be belief. The others should be time and sacrifice. And they descend on a decent person who stands beside some mean magnetic soul to hide their darkness in another's glow. I am anxious because my life is good, and I will love a world I did destroy. Just as rotten personas made in hate transubstantiate in the tendency of burning to offer upward its ash. While my sweetheart works overtime this week, I have spent my hours alone dismantling the appalling device in my basement. But as I pull it apart, it mocks me, knowing as I do, it has done its work. Millions of miles away, death from above speeds through the solar system, approaching the planet where Mahler wrote his music. It will be a defunct truth that kills me, and the sight of a serpent in the sky will be the final sign the condemned see. If only I had despised the winter instead of the cold itself, I could have found some relief in fashion and designed warm jackets instead of a burning crown. One must be well acquainted with the charms of decorative dishes and warm pies to know the power that a caterwaul at midnight may have over someone lost in Chapter 9 of Pride and Prejudice, in which Darcy and Elizabeth speak of poetry's relationship to sex. Everyone knows what happens in the end, but the end is just a catastrophe. The good bits are in the complication. Aristotle can be hard to follow, but tragedy is simplified in love, At first, one seems to look at a stranger in a mirror, and life is love reversed. Then their reflection proves insubstantial for conversations and convergences. I'm at this moment in my story and have no idea how it will feel to arrive with another at a shrine with meanings both joyous and saturnine. The other day I went out for pizza with the woman who holds my hand in hers, and the roads of our hunger there diverged. We ordered a large half mushroom, half cheese, so we could our own ways together go. But by the time the waiter brought our food, this is the most ridiculous. But by the time the waiter brought our food, we had forgotten who once wanted what, and feasted without discrimination. The desire to know each other's desire did overwhelm the knowledge of one's own. Transcendent moments become memories like everything else, and maybe that is an error in the making of the world. What if evolution's fundamental force were not endurance, but amazement? Or what if everything already runs zigzag toward heaven, and I am wrong? What if a giraffe stretches out its neck, seeking not fulfillment, but pleasing form, and nature is guided by beauty's voice? So I'm just going to read like two little new poems as like a cup of coffee or something. These are, so I'll read, kind of brand new poems. I just want you to hear out loud. And this is from a series called Lamps and Paths, and it began with 3 poems that I wrote for my friend Charlotte Moth, who's an artist, and she needed some texts for a film. So I just kept going, and I'm writing all these things that are like lamps, about things that we use to guide our lives. Okay. The lamp of resentment. I'll stay negative and then I'll go. The ice remains where shadows fell, many thoughts but a dearth of thinking. It's natural to hate fame and poetry, remembering the popular kids of school, the fifth wheel with a generator at the camp next to yours, a drone at the beach. It's enough to make some of us throw our pianos into the sea. Did you write that in your dressing room, or does it just smell that way? To say their art is a form of gated community is unkind. The gold lining of those cathedrals is ill-gotten. Stay away. I'll end with this one. The lamp of sex. The icebergs melt, oceans rise, islands drown. But look there at those 2 clouds. In bed, made light and soft by making love or fucking, made one, but not really. It's embarrassing only because the world has fallen. What are we? There's just one way to find out. Thank you all.
All right, one more round of applause for Sarah, Danielle, and Josh. And thanks again to Malvern, and thanks to you all for coming. Normally at these things we have like a short Q&A at the end, but I think I can maybe say if you want to mill around, our readers will be happy to answer questions if you have them. Thanks again.